Emily looked at her son with a smile as he tried on his new suit. Tall, handsome, dark-haired. Tomorrow her boy is getting married. I can't believe it. John carefully looked at his reflection in the mirror, then nodded satisfied. The suit fit perfectly. Fancy suit? The boy turned to his mother. And the color is good, and looks expensive. It costs a lot too, thought Emily, but said aloud, I'm glad I pleased. At the wedding, I'm sure to start crying as soon as I see you. At the wedding? John finally got away from the mirror. Mom, are you going to the wedding or what? We agreed that you wouldn't be there. Agreed? Son, I thought you were joking. What joke? Son was pacing nervously around the room. Have you forgotten what kind of parents Vicky has? It's going to be all elite at the wedding. You'll feel like the poor relation. I'll start worrying about you. Mother, do you want to ruin my big day? The son sat down next to Emily on the couch. He took her hand and shook it gently. Mama, just imagine how pathetic you will look against the background of these buffoonish ladies. My heart would burst from such humiliation. Vicky and I will come to your place another day, okay? We'll have tea or champagne. You'll congratulate us. Give us our present. Emily's heart squeezed with resentment. Her own son is ashamed of her to such an extent that he is willing to look like a homeless orphan at his own wedding. Why would I look pathetic? The mother objected. I've made an appointment with a good hairdresser and a manicure. I'll wear a decent dress. What decent dress? That old blue thing? John barked and rushed around the room again. Well, he stood in front of his mother. If you don't understand in a nice way, then I'll tell you in plain words. I don't want you at my wedding. I may be a bastard, but I'm ashamed that my mother is a cleaner. I don't want you embarrassing me in front of Vicky's family by looking like a bum. Is that clearer? Emily, shocked by her son's confession, could not say a word. John silently took his backpack, suit bag, and headed out the door. On the threshold, he stopped. I repeat, do not come to the ceremony. No one will be glad to see you there. John had left hours ago, dusk had fallen outside, and Emily was still sitting on the sofa in a daze. She could not even cry from the shock. Tears came a little later when the woman turned on the light and took out an old album of family photographs from the dresser. That album contained her entire unsophisticated life. Memories came over Emily with such force that it was difficult to breathe. An old frayed photograph. Blue-eyed 2-year-old girl looks intently into the lens. The colorful dress was clearly someone else's. Next to her is a thin, strange woman. Distracted look, silly smile. Even in a bad picture, you can tell that the woman is tipsy. Emily was 2.5 years old when her mother was deprived of parental rights, and she disappeared from her daughter's life forever. As she grew up, she did not even try to look for her good-for-nothing mother. Group picture. 10-year-old Emily with unruly golden curls stands in the second row. Third from the left. Life in the orphanage was not sugar-coated. The cook stole food, the teachers used foul language, the director encouraged hazing. She was totally uninterested in the ways the older kids used to maintain discipline. 3 pretty girls in waitress uniforms posed coquettishly for photographs on the porch of an establishment with a slightly crooked signboard. After high school, Emily did not bother to choose a profession. She quickly found a job as a waitress in a roadside cafe with a catchy name by the road. The owner paid a small salary, but the waiter's main income was tips, and the pretty, swift Emily was tipped quite generously by her customers. 12-hour shifts were terribly exhausting, but the girl was not discouraged. Emily liked her independent life. She was given a spacious and bright room in a communal apartment. Her neighbors, an elderly couple, were friendly. Emily had money, albeit not much. In addition, she unexpectedly discovered her talent, the ability to dress decently for mere pennies. The girl bought clothes in second-hand shops and altered, reshaped, turning shabby stuff into a fashionable thing. Summer glade in the woods. Happy, giggling Emily in a big wreath of flowers and leaves sits on the green grass. A handsome, dark-haired boy wearing the same wreath hugs her by the shoulders. So many years have passed, but Emily's heart still sinks at the sight of this photo. She had been working at the cafe, by the road, for about a year when she met Ethan. On that summer morning, the cafe was surprisingly crowded. Emily was rushing around the hall with a tray, serving impatient customers. Suddenly, she tripped on a flat spot and knocked over a glass of tomato juice on a guy sitting at a table by the window. A bright red stain slowly spread across the light-colored shirt. Emily was horrified and speechless. The shirt was obviously expensive. She did not have time to come to herself, as the owner of the cafe immediately appeared near the table. Jacob started fussing around the guy and yelling at the poor waitress, threatening to fire her. "Why do you have to work so hard?" The guy grinned and handed Emily the keys to the car. "Do not worry. I'm going to my parents' place at the cottage. I have a clean T-shirt in the car. Could you bring me a backpack from the back seat?" "I'll get it myself, Ethan." Obliging Jacob snatched the keys from Emily. "Otherwise, this hen will break something in the car." Left alone with a client, the frightened girl finally managed to apologize. "I'm sorry, please. With me, it's the first time, honestly. And the damage I will compensate." "Calm down. What damage?" "It's nothing, young lady. By the way, what's your name?" he asked. "Emily." "And I'm Ethan." He held out his hand to her. Timidly shaking in response to the stranger's hand, Emily, for the first time, dared to look at his face. He was an attractive guy. Tall, athletic, gray, slightly mocking eyes, a slight charming smile. The owner brought his client a backpack and offered to escort him to a place where he could clean up. Passing Emily, Jacob Riley asked, "What are we standing around for? Is the shift over already?" She was receiving money from a couple in love when she heard a cheerful voice behind her. "Emily, could you give me a minute of your attention?" She turned around. Ethan, in a fresh blue T-shirt, was sitting at the same table. "Will you take the order?" he asked. "Sure." Serving the handsome visitor, the girl felt stiff. Her cheeks were on fire. Jacob personally walked the guy to the door, then winked at Emily. "Do not be offended. I yelled at you on purpose, or else he would have made you pay for the shirt. It's more expensive than your salary." "How do you know this guy?" Emily asked. "That's Ethan Johnson, our mayor's son. Every dog in town knows him." By evening, Emily was so tired from many hours of fuss that she forgot to think about the morning incident. She had one desire, to get home as soon as possible and fall into bed. It was already dark outside. There was no telling how long she would have to wait for the bus. Suddenly, a light-colored foreign car pulled up to the cafe. Emily involuntarily retreated to the porch, but after a closer look, she recognized the car. "I wonder what the mayor's son was doing here." Ethan jumped out of the car, took a large bouquet from the seat, and went straight to Emily. Closely approaching the astonished girl, he shoved the flowers in her hands. "Already finished working. Sorry, I did not know what kind of bouquets you like, so I did abandon white roses. I promise that later I will give only your favorite flowers." "Later?" The completely confused waitress asked, "Why?" "Why?" Ethan laughed. "I'm courting you. By the way, it's such a lovely evening. Maybe we could go somewhere." Emily had already forgotten that she had been insanely sleepy. Everything that was happening now seemed like a magical dream. She suddenly realized that she was ready to go anywhere with this guy, but fortunately, she remembered her unpresentable appearance. Old jeans, a plain t-shirt, and who knows what she was wearing. "Thanks, but I'm exhausted. I can't today," said Emily regretfully. "Tomorrow then?" Ethan didn't give up. "Tomorrow then," she echoed. They met the next day and never parted. It was love at first sight. Ethan, an economics student, successfully passed his summer session, and the couple began to see each other every day. In July, the guy took Emily on vacation. She had no passport, so they spent a magical 10 days in Miami. Ethan introduced his sweetheart to his university buddies. As a merry company, they often went swimming, barbecuing in the countryside. It was the brightest, most carefree, and unforgettable summer in Emily's life. She had never felt such unrestrained happiness again. The lovers had already begun to talk about marriage, but all of their plans for the future fell apart at once. One day Ethan's cousin saw his brother on the street in the company of a modestly dressed stranger. Since then, Emily's life has turned into hell. The Johnsons were adamantly against the relationship between their only son and some poor girl from an orphanage. Ethan's mother, his aunt, and grandmother called Emily daily. They showered the girl with insults and threats, demanding that she leave their boy alone. Ethan's cousin came to the cafe and made a terrible scandal, spilling a milkshake from a tall glass in the waitress's face. Old ladies on the bench near her home entrance said that some people spent an hour asking them about Emily. "Yes, there was a lady here recently," confirmed Jacob Johnson, the flatmate, "offering my wife and me good money if we confirm that you are a drug addict, a prostitute, and an alcoholic. I kicked that hyena out." Emily told her fiancé nothing, knowing that at the moment, the question of his trip abroad on a student exchange was being decided. Apparently, the guy was also under pressure because anxiety settled in his eyes. Sometimes he stared intensely at his lover's face, but when he saw her affectionate smile, he sighed in relief. About 2 weeks before Ethan's departure, a telephone call rang in Emily's apartment. "It's David Anderson." She heard a stiff man's voice in the receiver. "I am Ethan's father. You must part with my son before he leaves. Tell him you have another man. If you ignore my words, you will regret bitterly." And without waiting for an answer, the mayor hung up. Emily was ready to give her life for Ethan. Could she refuse the one whom she so desperately loved? When her lover flew to London, Around the Girl began with cosmic speed events that she still remembers as a bad dream. Jacob, bribed by the head of the city, suddenly accused the waitress of a major shortage, and the girl was arrested. Emily was so shocked by the despicable act of her boss that she did not even take care of reliable protection when the case was quickly taken to court. She had no doubt that very soon the whole truth would emerge, and these terrible charges would be dropped. The trial was like a farce. The lawyer, provided by the state, only slept during the trial, but the prosecutor did his best. Every day, Emily waited for Ethan to show up and save her, but her girlfriend reported that, according to rumors, the guy was going to continue his studies in England. Emily was given 3 years. Already in prison, she learned that she was expecting a child. About the time spent in women's prison, the woman forbade herself to remember. It was too painful. Seized by despair, she hurriedly turned the page of the family album. a dark-haired, gray-eyed baby boy. Emily gently stroked the photo. What a tender and clever toddler was her son. God only knows what it took her to raise the boy alone. Emily served 1.5 years, then was released on parole. The girl was unspeakably lucky that her child was not taken away from her. When she was released from prison, she was faced with a lot of problems. No one wanted to hire a young woman with a small child who had also been convicted. Thanks to a neighbor, Jacob Johnson helped through his adult apprentice to place John in a daycare center. Now Emily could work tirelessly. She worked as a janitor in a restaurant, cleaned the local offices in the evenings, worked part-time at a car wash on weekends, sewed pillowcases and duvet covers at night. Emily never looked back. Why would she need unnecessary pain? While the woman was serving her sentence, all old connections were severed. One day she accidentally met a former girlfriend, and she said that the owner of a roadside cafe, Jacob, went bankrupt. The mayor Johnson moved with his family to New York City, having been promoted, and his son married 1 year ago on a Capitol Beauties. Emily cried all night, then wiped her tears and went to wash the floors in the restaurant. She had to raise her son. From now on, that was her only concern and joy. It was beginning to dawn outside the window. Could it be that Emily had been sitting over the album all night? She went to bed, but thoughts of her son kept her awake. She had always tried so hard to please him with an expensive toy, a tasty meal, a fancy dress. She was ready to smash herself to pieces just to fulfill all his wishes. As much as possible, of course. If John needed a new gadget, he calmly announced it to his mother, knowing that she would definitely find the necessary amount. At the very least, he would hire her to mop the floors in some other institution. Of course, it was Emily's fault that John grew up so insensitive and selfish. She never complained to him about tiredness, never took sick leave, always tucked the tidbits in at lunch. Not surprisingly, the boy never once thought about the cost of his mother's money. And now the native son is ashamed of Emily and does not want the wretched cleaner to attend the wedding ceremony. "I've lived," Emily sighed bitterly, and then turned to the portrait of John hanging on the wall. "Son, I'm 25 years to please you in everything, but this time I'll do it on my own. I'm sorry." The woman got out of bed and pulled out a box from the nightstand, in which she kept her savings in an old-fashioned way. Plus, there's a month's salary on the card, enough for an outfit, hair, and beautician. Emily's appearance at the wedding hall made a real sensation. She always looked young, and after her visit to the beauty salon, it was as if she lost 10 years. Male guests furtively looked at the slim, fair-haired woman in a gorgeous blue dress. During the ceremony, the mother, wiping away her tears, admired the serious, slightly confused son and his charming bride. Then all the guests congratulated the newlyweds. John stealthily made his way through the crowd to his mother and hissed, "So my request means nothing to you. I hope you're not going to the restaurant." "I won't," Emily nodded. "I've already seen everything I wanted to see." "How are you doing?" Vicky, who was blushing with happiness, ran up to them. "Emily, you look stunning. My parents invite you to go with them to the restaurant." "Thank you, but I have to go." "What do you mean, time to go?" Vicky was indignant. "John, what's going on?" "Really, Mom, what's the hurry? It's your only son's wedding, after all." With a strained smile, John invited his mother to the restaurant. When it came time for parents to congratulate the newlyweds, Emily took the microphone. "Children, be happy. Be happy and love each other for life." There was so much sincere feeling in Emily's short speech that the guests gave her a standing ovation. Descending from the small stage, The woman almost ran into a tall man in an expensive suit. His face seemed familiar. "It can't be," Emily said aloud, blocking her way. "Ethan, is it really you? What are you doing here?" "Emily, I couldn't believe my eyes. The father of the bride is my business partner. He invited me to the wedding. What a handsome son you have." Ethan, worried, took Emily's hand. "Can we go to the window? Let's talk. You're alone without your wife?" "I've been divorced for 10 years. No children." They talked for an hour. Ethan told how his father, who flew to visit him abroad, told him that Emily had met another guy and left for New York City with him. Shocked, Ethan did not believe his father. Afraid to humiliate his beloved with insulting suspicions, he first decided to find out the truth from his best friend. The friend went to a roadside cafe, but did not find the girl there. The owner and the waitresses both confirmed the information he had received from his father. "I almost went crazy with grief. I stayed in England for another 6 months. Then I came back to New York, and my father was promoted. Then I got married. Was I happy all those years? Not a minute. Only when I was young. With you. Well, how have you been all this time?" "Let's not talk about sad things," Emily suggested. "It's still a wedding. I'll tell you everything later, but now ask me to dance." The guests could not take their eyes off the mature, beautiful couple dancing the waltz. John looked at his mother and did not recognize her. He suddenly thought that his mother, a very attractive woman, very young, gave up her personal life for the sake of her son. For him. For the first time in his life, John was truly ashamed. For himself. Then he noticed his mother walking with some rich guy on her arm towards the exit. John caught up with her on the porch. "Mom, where are you going?" "I'm leaving." "You wanted it so much, didn't you?" said his mother. "Mom, I'm sorry, but where are you going with this man?" "With this man, I'm ready to go to the ends of the earth," said Emily sincerely. "By the way, meet your father." Ethan and John stared at Emily dumbfounded. After a moment of silence, she shook her head firmly and smiled. "I think the 3 of us will have a very long and difficult conversation."